Welcome back to Grade 8 History, Unit Number 1, Creating Canada, 1850 to 1890. This is Lesson Number 8, How did Railways Contribute to Unity and Expansion? Before we begin today's lesson, let's consider the following. Imagine you are living in Canada in 1870. How easy or how hard do you think it would be to get to Prince Edward Island or British Columbia? Please put the video on pause now so that you can write down your response to this question. All right, let's get started. Today, there are many options for traveling across Canada. There's a car, bus, plane, railway. In 1870, traveling from Ontario to Manitoba meant taking multiple boats over lakes and rivers and riding wagons over rough roads. The Canadian government saw the building of railways as a new way to connect the country. And take a look at this picture on the left. Here's a question for you. How might people travel across Canada today if the railway did not exist? Please put the video on pause now so that you can write down your response to this question. And moving on. In 1871, Prince Edward Island, which was still not part of Canada, began to build its own railway. When it went over budget, the colony had two choices: raise taxes or join Confederation. PEI would decide to join Canada in 1873, but there were many people who saw this as a sad necessity in order to survive. So here on the map on the left, we can see Canada growing a little bit more. So now we've got Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. We've got Manitoba and PEI tucked away here. Okay, and we'll be talking about British Columbia pretty soon. Okay, again, here's a commemorative silver dollar from 1973, which celebrated the 100th anniversary or the centennial anniversary of PEI joining Confederation. Also in 1871, British Columbia agreed to enter Confederation. One of the main conditions was that Canada build a Transcontinental Railway that would link BC with Ontario. Prime Minister Macdonald promised that the railway would be completed within 10 years. Okay, so BC added to the map. Again, in 1971, the Royal Canadian Mint issued a silver dollar that had the British Columbia coat of arms in place of the image of the voyageurs on the silver dollar. Unfortunately, plans to build the railway were marred by a political scandal. In 1872, there was a federal election. Macdonald and his government were losing popularity, and so Macdonald asked for private donations to help his Conservative Party win the election. Sir Hugh Allan, this man on the left, who was a Canadian businessman, gave Macdonald $350,000. And Macdonald put that money towards funding his campaign, and he won the election. Now, Allen's donation was perfectly legal. Individuals, organizations, they can give political donations. But what happened next was illegal. In 1873, Allen's Canada Pacific Company was given the contract to build the railroad. Politicians are not allowed to give favors or contracts in exchange for political donations, and in April of 1873, a rival politician claimed to have read a telegram which proved that MacDonald had been bribed by Allen. Newspapers covered the story, which came to be known as the Pacific Scandal. MacDonald resigned in November of 1873, and Alexander Mackenzie of the Liberal Party became Prime Minister. Just take a look at this political cartoon here on the left, one of a number of political cartoons from this time. My question for you is, what do you think the woman and the beaver are why do you think the woman and the beaver are sitting and crying at McDonald's feet? Please put the video on pause so that you can write down your ideas on why the woman and the beaver are sitting and crying at Johnny McDonald's feet. Okay, let's continue. Mackenzie was not a bad prime minister, but his government faced many challenges. The economy was suffering as businesses failed and unemployment rose. Many Canadians moved to the US to find work. As a result, the government was unable to fulfill MacDonald's promise to complete the railway within 10 years. And here's a picture of Alexander Mackenzie. He was a middle-class stone mason who was well respected for his refusal to take or give political favors. So he was very different from a lot of politicians who uh, are wealthy businessmen or lawyers. He didn't have so many connections, and he didn't like the idea that politicians were getting special favors and they were giving out favors in return. He oversaw the completion of the Parliament buildings in Ottawa. He introduced the secret ballot, meaning that people did not have to openly declare who they were voting for. Mackenzie also oversaw the creation of the Supreme Court of Canada and the Royal Military College. So he did some very important things in his short time as Prime Minister. In 1878, it was time for another election. MacDonald returned with a platform which came to be known as the National Policy. There were three parts to this policy. Tariffs would be placed on imported goods to encourage people to buy Canadian-made products. Immigration to the West would be encouraged in order to build the railway, in order to build the economy. To get new settlers to the West quickly, the focus would be on constructing the railway. And usually politicians use the word new in their election campaign. However, as we can see in this poster here, MacDonald wisely decided to focus on what was old and familiar to encourage voters to make him Prime Minister again. Voters looked past the scandal in 1873 and elected MacDonald. Now, due to the Pacific Scandal, the new government had to find a new company to build the railway. In 1881, the government hired a new private company named the Canadian Pacific Railway Company to build the massive rail system. The company was given $25 million and an enormous amount of land along the rail route that could be sold to future settlers. And you can see the path the railway would take here in this red line. Construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway began in 1881. The route ran through the Northwest where many native people lived. Due to a shortage of workers, the government recruited people from China to help build the railroad. Many Chinese laborers came with the intention of saving up money from their labor and then returning to China. For its part, the Canadian government did not want the Chinese workers to stay in Canada after the railway was completed. Chinese workers were given the most physically demanding and dangerous tasks. One of these jobs involved lighting explosives to blast tunnels through rock. Through oral history, it has been said that there was one dead Chinese worker for each mile of track. The Chinese workers lived in camps near the railway. They received $1 a day, compared to Caucasian workers who received $1.50 to $2.50 per day. In 1885, a ceremony was held to commemorate the completion of the railway. A famous photograph shows Donald Smith, an investor in the railway, driving in the last spike at the ceremony. And there he is, front and center. With the completion of the railway, Macdonald's dream of Canada being a country that ran from sea to sea had become a reality. All right, so we're going to go over the highlights from this video in our next class, and we'll finish things off by discussing these two questions. One, how was the labor of the Chinese railway workers important in uniting Canada? And two, whose way of life would be threatened by the building of the railway? If you don't feel ready to answer one or both of these two questions, it means you need to go back and listen to this video at least one more time. But if you are confident, or when you are confident, please put the video on pause so that you can write your responses to these two questions. I look forward to hearing everybody's ideas in response to all of the questions which were on this recording. But until our next class, this concludes today's video.